The Y'all Show. How are y'all doing? It's been a little while since we got back together here with a little video, and hope all of you are doing great. It's certainly always fun to join you here on the show all about the Southeast, powered by y'all.com. And we're very delighted here. We got kind of a pseudo holiday going on across the region in a couple of days. It's called Halloween. And to help us get ready for Halloween 2021, it's our own scary ghost and goblin. And I do mean that. All you got to do is look at him right there. It's the Toccopola Storyteller, Jerry Short. Happy Halloween 2021 to you, sir.
Boo. How you doing?
I'm good. So, yeah, we got you here, Jerry, back on here to have a few minutes talking. Halloween, is that something that growing up where you did in the suburbs of Toccopola, is that something y'all went out and celebrated?
Did I do Halloween? Halloween did me, I think. Um, yeah, we did just about anything we could do and still get away with it and not get put in jail. Back in those days, you could almost use real dynamite instead of cherry bombs and firecrackers.
That
Back in my day.
Yeah, well, back in your days, and the reason for that wasn't it to a lot of people had that for busting up beaver dams.
I had a lot of later on. I had a lot of for beaver dams. My day it was creeks usually. Back when I was a boy, these creeks would fill up and just small creeks on our farm, and that's what we used the dynamite for. There was to blow the trash that had accumulated and old broken limbs. Maybe it all got together in the curve of a creek. Cypress Creek ran through going down to the Yachting River, and we'd blow that stuff up. I'd help my daddy, and my granddaddy would say, "Y'all come back for dinner tonight. Don't get blowed up." So I guess we were handling something a little bit bigger than we should have been handling, but it worked out pretty good.
Sounds like it did, Jerry. Of course, you grew up in a different time period, and that time period sadly is gone. Was
Oh
it
man,
was it pretty easy for a youngster to get your hands on something like dynamite back in the 1950s?
I could. You needed to be around the farm. If you lived in a town, you probably couldn't. But I could because of the farm and because my grandparents and my daddy had dynamite. And later on in my job, I used a lot of dynamite blowing up, like you said, beaver ponds and things like that. But back during Halloween, it was we trick or treated just like the rest of the world, and you'd go. Hopefully, you didn't have to trick that much. Mostly treat. Sometimes school teachers might be the catch a blunt end of a trick or treat, but I know we had cherry bombs in and chasers and all those kind of things. And another thing we did that I probably shouldn't even tell.
I
We were
think the
bad
statute of
about getting
limitations are up by now.
we were bad about getting square bales of hay. I know one time we blocked the main highway. We piled it up with hay that we got out of somebody's barn, a friend of mine's family barn, and we hauled it and we piled it all up, set it on fire. We had the main highway backed up about 50 cars and two trailway buses. So, uh, and then when it burned up, we'd slip off to the barn, kind of like hitting watermelon patches about that time of the year too. You'd hit watermelon patches and you'd take those, and sometimes we'd blow them up with cherry bombs and things like that. And some of the bad guys would blow up mailboxes off of, which would be a federal offense today. Probably was then, but I know we had a couple of principals that I had nothing to do with, obviously, but they had their mailboxes decapitated from their front porch.
Now,
So,
it's been long enough, Jerry.
yeah,
Be
statute of limitations up, I
Scout's
think.
honor, Scout's honor. Did you blow up mailboxes with those things?
Uh, I might have carried a match.
So you were right there involved with it.
I don't think I did the whole thing. Um, when I think about Halloween being such a dang football fanatic, I think about Billy Cannon's 83, no, what was it, 87-yard touchdown run that night, on Halloween night in 1959 to knock Ole Miss out of the national championship and win him the Heisman Trophy.
That wasn't such a
So
happy
anyway, that's my
Halloween, huh?
Halloween. That was my Halloween nightmare night. Then could have made a movie out of it.
Yeah.
I think I busted a radio. Does that count on that Halloween night?
It might. So you weren't there, is what you're saying?
Yeah, no, I was there, but I busted a
You
couple
were
of radios.
there?
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to be there, and I'll tell you how I got there.
Because a lot of people, I think, for a stadium that probably held 55,000 at that time,
It was
about 10 million
60.
people claim to have been there.
Well, Billy Cannon, I talked to him one time later when I was covering sports, and I told Billy I was there, the man who ran the ball, who
Yeah,
got the
I know who
Heisman
Billy
Trophy.
Cannon was.
And Billy said, "Oh, so you're another one of those million people that saw that run, right?" I said, "No, but I'm one of them that saw it." And the way it happened, the back then they had a train that would leave the university, and the students would get on it. Saturday morning early, it came through and stopped, and they opened the doors and they said, "Anybody want to go to Baton Rouge?" Had a big banner flying on the side of the train, and it had Ole Miss #1, second to none. I think we were ranked second or third, and LSU was ranked first, who was coming off a national championship in '58, and they were still undefeated, and we were undefeated. And so I jumped on the train and went with the students, and sat in the students. They just carried me on in with them to the student section, and I was about 13 and a half, I guess. So I was a kid in diapers, really, in the middle of all that mess down there. But on the way back, the train was really quiet, and it didn't stop and let us off till it pulled in the side track at Ole Miss. And the students got off, and that sign that said Ole Miss #1, second to none, was dragging the track and was about off. So that's my Halloween nightmare right there.
Well,
But
Jerry, I'm glad we asked the story
I
about
asked a
that.
color commentator named Lyman Helms. He was from up in Tishomingo County, Mississippi. I was in the press box with him at Baton Rouge one night, later when I was covering sports. And I thought we'd scored when we come down. And I said, Lyman, right here, look right there. We scored there, and they didn't give it to us. They cheated us, right? And he said, hate to tell you this, I was sitting right where we are right now. We didn't score. So I had a Halloween 2 nightmare. So anyway, football always, back in those days, seemed to come with the plan of everything we did. But that burning that hay, we even burned some hay in somebody's yard. I didn't get involved in that.
Sure,
I think
sure.
somebody did in the yard of somebody they was upset with about something or other. But there was always a lot you could get into in those days. And you could usually run and get away from it. And they would just say, kids having fun, maybe, hopefully. Hopefully that's what they were saying. But, if you got caught, I had a friend that fell off the truck going to get another load of hay, and I can hear his head hitting the concrete now. And as we went around the curve trying to get out in the country to a barn to bring another pickup load of hay back, square bale hay then, Had that seagrass rope around two of it, and the bales were probably about 4 feet by 2 or something like that, 4 by 1.5 or so or 2, and it was a lot of fun. And every now and then, somebody would hold one of those. You know what a cherry bomb is? Or that after your time?
No, we
Before
haven't.
your time?
I'm,
Probably
I,
before your time.
I hate to tell you, Jerry, I'm actually that old.
You did have a cherry bomb?
We had cherry bombs. They still sell cherry
Okay.
bombs.
Well, you remember the green wick? I mean, where you lit it,
Yeah.
and then it had it was a round red ball, and that thing was pretty powerful because if you put it under a can and then blew that doggone lit it, and you could blow that can up almost as high as John Glenn went, I think. But it would get on up there, and but every now and then we'd have a casualty. Somebody would light the cherry bomb and not throw it in time. Quick fuse, and hey, you'd almost need 50 stitches in your hand because those things were pretty strong. But as far as just a regular Halloween, yeah, when I was really little, I'd go knock on the door, and those good old maid ladies would give you all the candy and the candied apples and the doggone. Sometimes they'd even give you dimes or pennies or nickels that they had saved. And so people got in the spirit. Seemed like a heck of a lot more then. They decorated more, and kids would go in groups, and they didn't have to be taken by their parents. That now, we've gone to a thing now they call trick or treat trunk in the trunk of a car,
Yeah.
and they do it usually in a church parking lot, and people pull in there and raise the trunk of their car, and people come around, in their costumes, what kids do, and they get their treats that way, and that's how things have changed. And back in our day, you could roam the whole town and go house to house, and the people at the house were glad to see you, and they'd always try to guess who's behind that mask. Who is that? Is that a little Short, or is that a little Jones, or is that a little Smith? So it was a lot of fun, and everything wasn't like I made it sound like to start with. That was just one or two occasions that those 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 riot conditions occurred. But
Yeah.
but usually it was just all for fun, and the parents went along with it really well.
Talking to our Toccopola storyteller, Jerry Short, here on the show All About the South. Jerry, as we wrap up our Halloween discussion with you, I want to take you back again to the 1950s or 60s. Hopefully, that's not too hard of an ask to have you go back in time. I want to know, in the suburbs where you grew up there of Toccopola, were you aware of any haints? Were you aware of any true ghosts that were actually in that area?
Well, we had an old hotel that people were kind of scared to go by, and the name of it was the Old Short Hotel. It had belonged to my great granddad, and it joined our property, but my uncle had possession of it, and my granddaddy took the farmland. But everybody said somebody had burned up in that house, and people were really scared to go up there. Of course, I think they was as scared of my old Uncle Ed as there was anyone, because he was notorious also. But yeah, it was. I think it was a haunted house, and then we did a lot of tricks too. On people at Halloween. We'd take them to an old house out in the country, and this is one. You couldn't do this and get away with it today. But I had a real good friend, and we carried him to an old house out in the country. And we went up on the door and we said, "Let's go in here." And we knocked on the dang floor of the place, and we had a couple of guys hiding in there with double barrel shotguns, maybe a 12 gauge, and they'd shoot up in the air, and then one of us would take a fall off the porch like we'd been shot, and then the other guy would take off running, and he'd run to town if it was 5 miles, and then we'd beat him back in the car. But by the time we got back to town at the swimming pool, he'd come running up. He'd be white as a ghost. So he was playing Casper the Friendly Ghost, I guess. But that was a trick that we would play on each other, and that was it was kind of fun. It was fun for us, but the person that took off running and went through the brambles and the bushes and the thickets like Andrew Jackson was going to the Battle of New Orleans in 1812. That's
Yeah, I
about
know.
how he looked when he
I know the
got there.
Johnny Horton song.
Yeah, good old Johnny Horton. Battle of New Orleans, wasn't that Johnny Horton?
Yeah.
Good song. I remember it well. I had to go to dentist that next Monday. That's the first time I heard it. And that was a Halloween feeling there. thinking about that all day
I
Sunday.
can't believe y'all would pull those kind of tricks. I mean, that's just wrong.
That was just fun, though, John. I mean,
Idiots.
you know,
Thank God we're not doing those kind of awful tricks on our.
but people would run and they would run and they would run.
I bet
I,
you.
they
Let me
didn't know
ask you
they could
this:
run.
were you ever one of those kids that went running 5 miles
Now, I
with the
usually
ghost?
was involved in shooting a gun or taking the shot.
Yeah, but you never got tricked or
No, I was a
punked.
little bit ahead of the game on some
Okay,
of that stuff.
all right.
And I might have been instigating some. I don't know.
Sounds like it.
You know, I wouldn't have
You're
been.
probably the only kid, if they're still alive, that even can remember that thing. What?
Oh, no. It was just, if anybody, well, unfortunately, that guy he lost his life in a car wreck, but the one I was just telling you about. But when he was about 19,
Hmm.
wasn't too long after all that. But
Yeah.
we we had a lot of fun doing that. We'd get a new kid in town, and we'd pull that on him. We'd say, "Let's go over to that old haunted house tonight and do so and so." And then somebody step out and shoot that gun, and hey, you didn't stop till you got to where you thought you were safe. I
That
promise
is
you.
the dumbest thing ever. And let me take this minute here on the Y'all Show before our legal team at the Y'all Show comes in here screaming at us. Kids, do not try that trick at home. Do not ever do that trick. That's just awful. Jerry, we're not done with you. We are
All
going to
right.
scoot away from talking Halloween talk with our Toccopola Storyteller. And when we come back here on the show about the Southeast, we're going to, Jerry, talk about something Pete Buttigieg might need to get a phone call about.
Oh mercy.
You know what that is?
Uh, yeah, I milked a few cows.
No, no, no. We're going to come back and talk about something you just brought up that I want to ask you about. It has to do with transportation. And we'll have that
Oh, okay.
conversation with Jerry Short when the
I can
Y'all
ride a horse.
Show, yeah, when the Y'all Show comes right back. Stay tuned
All
for
right.
more. Jerry, I don't know if you can, uh,
Yes, sir.
um,
I'm here, willing, ready, and able.
okay. You have a little tiny white thing up there where your hair, up on your forehead. I mean, up in your hair. It's a little, it's like something stuck in your hair. You're almost there. Keep going higher up. Do a little like picking, like this. It's about, yeah, I think it did. All right, we'll keep going. All right, here we go. Let's come back. And back we are on the show covering everything Southern alongside our Toccopola storyteller, Jerry Short. This is the Y'all Show, and I'm John Rawl. Glad to be back here with you. 803-816-1170 is the number for you to get in touch with our storyteller if you've got something to say. Maybe you heard him in the previous segment talking a little bit about his Halloween memories and more. While we were having that conversation about Halloween and his trip to Baton Rouge in 1959 for that famous Billy Cannon football game, Jerry talked about jumping on a train in a place called Oxford and going to Baton Rouge. That's something you can't do in today's world, is jump on trains and go to some of these so-called smaller communities. There's really not that many passenger trains and the train lines from Amtrak available anywhere. Jerry, what happened and why is passenger train travel not something commonly found in the world that we live in?
Well, we go back to when my mother was a girl. Say when she was during World War II and that period of time. Of course, she had troop trains that the military rode on. When I first got in the military, we went troop train one time, and but mother went to California on the train,
From what
and I
town?
used to put. Pardon?
From what town did she travel?
She went from Memphis to L.A.
Okay.
and and they all had names. I had an uncle that was an engineer on the city of New Orleans
Mm-hmm.
by who was that guy? Some Guthrie
Yeah.
that sang that song.
Woody Guthrie.
And his route was from Memphis to Canton, Mississippi. And they had another one of my grandmother's brothers was a conductor on the Panama Limited. They had two passenger trains then, and they stayed pretty doggone full. And then of course buses and trains. And then didn't many people, hey, you had to really be in high cotton to fly. And so didn't many people fly. Everybody took the train. And they had big, immaculate dang depots and stuff like that for the train stations and all. And like in Memphis Union Station, I mean, it was immaculate. I remember picking people up there when I was a kid with my family, and I just it'd blow you away. The station was so big, and they'd be coming in from somewhere, kind of like the Alfred Hitchcock movie. What was that with uh, oh, it was Silver Streak they were on anyway.
Okay.
But the whole show was, I guess, on the train, and because people rode the train back in those days,
People rode the
and as
train on
Cary
trips
Grant.
more than they would try to get in their car and drive.
Well, no, because the train was pretty doggone fast. It had to go about 90 miles an hour. You had the Silver Streak, you had the city of New Orleans, and you had the Panama Limited, and Sunset something was the one from New Orleans to Los Angeles. And it came through South Mississippi, through Biloxi, and went on to Houston, Texas, and that way. Then you come on up, and you got the one come out of St. Louis was a Sunset Limited, and it came from Chicago, and it went on out to Los Angeles, San Francisco way. And then going north and south, you had the same situation with trains, and they all had their names. So, it was a big, big thing. And so people really, did that until airplanes became the mode of transportation. And people started it was just as cheap to fly eventually as it was
Uh,
almost to get your tickets on on a train and go. Now, I know when uh, trains, the government got involved too.
oh, this
And
was
usually
you
when the
talking about
government gets in, Amtrak,
Amtrak wasn't really a player or what didn't exist back
Amtrak
in the
become a player about in 1975.
ah
And when they become a player, the first head of Amtrak was Gil Carlisle from Mississippi, who had
okay
run for governor and as a Republican. And he was the first Republican I ever even knew. But he got appointed over Amtrak. And they had a line that goes come through your part of the world, the Carolinas, and comes on down into Chattanooga, I guess, and go on to Meridian and on into Hattiesburg and New Orleans. And that was the one he tried to build up really first on Amtrak. And then they went all over the country. But Amtrak, when the government gets involved, your unions get involved, which unions were always, in railroad. But it didn't take many people to run a train. You had your engineer, you had your conductors, and you had porters, for sleeper cars, and that was about it. You could probably get by with 10 people on a train from New York to Los Angeles. Well, then things change, and that don't cost that much money. You weren't out that much money. And originally, of course, they were coal and steam engine and all. Then they become diesel in about 1950, I'd say 55 or 56. They become where most all the trains were diesel. And then they were faster and they were smoother. And they were still good to ride on. But then when Amtrak got a hold of it, and planes got to be more of the thing, and you felt a little bit more. I think people felt a little bit more uppity when they was on a plane flying somewhere. Uh, and if you go back to the first chartered air football teams and people like that didn't fly; they went by train. Have you ever heard of the football team from the University of the South at Swanee
yeah
that played 6 games in 7 days, and then on the seventh day they rested?
yeah
That was all by train. They got on a train and they played Texas and Austin one day. The next day they played maybe Rice in Houston. The next day they played LSU. No, they played Tulane in New Orleans. The next day they played LSU in Baton Rouge. That's 4. The next day they played I I'm skipping one somewhere. But anyway, then they played Ole Miss in Memphis, and then they went home. So they said, uh, we met. That was all by train, and they was able to do that and play a game each day. And then I was like 1900, 1899 or 1900. But they pulled that off, and you couldn't do anything like that today. You know, I remember when I was a boy, all the Ole Miss teams would leave Oxford, and they had a spur that went right up to the stadium, and they would leave by train and go to Baton Rouge or to Knoxville, Tennessee, or to places like that. Now they would bus, close, but they would train if they could. So all that just kind of just vanished and went away as planes took over. And today, you've got scenic routes on trains. If you want a good scenic view, you can get on like at Niagara, Niagara, New York, somewhere up in that area, and go along the Great Lakes and go across through the mountains of Montana and and the parks out that way and Yellowstone and go on in through Idaho and go on to Seattle. And and then they like to do the Canadian route too. Some people could do that and come back to Canadian route. But basically, John, that's about the situation with trains today. They're for scenic stuff, as you know how they put that upper deck bubble in them,
Yeah,
where
they
you
have
can
an
sit up there and look out.
observatory.
Right. So I think that's probably got as much to do with it as anything. Is just man, there's an airport in every town, and there's a plane taking off every time if you go to Atlanta and sit there and watch a plane take off every doggone minute, and you go to Dallas Fort Worth and you watch the same thing. You go down to Houston, you watch the same thing. So you go to Memphis, you watch FedEx take off every
Yeah,
day.
all night
But
long and most of
yeah,
the day too. I didn't know if the interstate system, which came about mostly in the 1960s and 70s, if that had a big part in
well,
leading to the demise.
yeah, you got a point. It probably had a little bit, because back in the day when we'd make a trip out west, it would take everybody had to spend the night a couple of times to go to Arizona, say, because you had to go through every town, you had to hit every red light, you had to figure if you was going down Main or Central or Grand Boulevard in these towns. You didn't know, and it'd take you forever. I remember when we'd go out west, we'd always stay in Sherman, Texas. That's as far as you could make it in the first day. Now I can drive to Sherman, Texas in 6, 7 hours.
I don't think you
And
could.
back then, oh, I can too. And and then back in those days, that was the way it was. And the interstate system, now I can go to Sherman, Texas. When I said 6, 7 hours, I meant by interstate.
Yeah, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying, I think you'd probably have to make a couple of bathroom breaks and slow it down
yeah.
when you went through
Now
the
at my
natural
old
state.
age, I might. Yeah, my old age. Back then, well, I'm not even going to get into the Coke bottles and things that you had in your car. But anyway, no, I'm not even talking that.
Yeah.
But that would save you a stop if you were a little kid. If you like, I used to sleep in that back window. Uh, they had a place in the cars that you could lay down up in there when I was a kid.
Yeah.
We'd travel out west, and I'd crawl back up in there and crawl over the seats. And my grandmama would always say, "We have to have new seat covers when we get back. You've crawled over every seat, and you slept up in that back window the whole way." So
What a spoiled kid.
it was fun, but it took a long time. So
Well,
you
I'm
know,
glad we brought this up because, again, if you weren't around back in that time period, you probably have no clue what it was really like. And maybe I mentioned him in the previous segment, our Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, when he comes off his 6 month maternity leave,
that's
this might
right.
be something he can kind of spend some time on and make train travel great again.
Well, they can put a little of that budget in the doggone Amtrak system
Well,
to.
Joe Biden was the number one customer of Amtrak
Well,
prior
he said he had traveled. How many miles did he say?
a
Two
lot.
million. He
That's a
traveled
lot.
2 million miles. But you do the math on it. It's hard to come up with that. But that's what he said.
Especially knowing the distance between D.C. and
Yeah, two
Wilmington,
million, two
Delaware. It's
million.
not that far on a
That's
train.
from Delaware to Washington. You can. I can throw a javelin that far.
Yeah, well, I want to see that one too. Jerry, thank you. Always great to catch up with you. Thanks for the train memories, and thanks for the Halloween memories as too. And just don't ever invite me out to the edge of town and show me where that abandoned haunted house is.
We'll find one if you want to go.
No, I don't want to go that bad.
Just give me a thumb up.
He is our Toccopola storyteller. He is Jerry Short. Well, thank y'all for being a part of the show. We will continue to have more of our conversation about what's going on across the Southeast, and we'll continue that conversation right after this.